We process the pigs when they're at a particular weight. We're not hard and fast that we've got to get the pigs to a particular weight in a certain number of days. We're not precious about that. We're more interested in the quality of the product than only being interested in the cost to get the product to market.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. After decades as a horticulturalist, Andrew Hearne had a yearning to get out to the country and grow nutrient-rich organic vegetables and help replenish the soil and the land. It wasn't long before he became enamoured by the teachings of organic pioneer Joel Salatin, who inspired him to introduce pigs to his farm. With the firm belief that it is important to connect with the food you eat, he's now producing some of Australia's very best pork. Andrew, your farm is on the New South Wales mid-north coast, just inland from Port Macquarie. What is it about that region that's so good for farming pigs?
Well, at one stage it was really, really great because there was an abattoir literally just up the road, which was very helpful, but that's not the case anymore. I guess what's really useful is that the climate is quite good, and in that it's usually fairly even temperature wise, and there's reliable rainfall most of the time. It's usually, we get about 1,400 mils of rain in an average year, so that's good.
What led to the move to Port Macquarie and start a farm?
I was when I was 12, I declared I wanted to be a farmer. I guess that was born out of my growing up. My parents had family friends who owned farms, and I don't know, 3 or 4 weekends a year we'd jump into the car and head off to the sheep farm in Taranah or an apple orchard in Orange, and spend the weekend. And us kids would just run riot around the farm, and I loved it. I also had a grandfather that enjoyed growing food, and I guess that's what inspired me to follow the dream to become a farmer. I mean, it took me 43 years to get here, but here we are, and I think we're turning it out.
Well, tell us about that decision to move to where you are and how it all started.
Okay, well, I met my wife and sort of said, well, look, this is my dream, and thankfully she said, yeah, you can enroll me in that too. So we sort of set some parameters. We figured that we need to be no more than 4 hours out of Sydney and no more than an hour from the coast. So we spent we had this plan that we'd spend a year researching. So we'd go away 1 weekend a month and look at certain areas. And Port Macquarie was pretty good. It had a big population. It had a good hospital, and at that stage, and that was why we chose where we are. And then we found this property which was ideal for what we wanted. So here we are. And I mean, in many ways, I suppose, like most urban people or tree changers, there were lots of things that we should have made certain of about the property that we didn't. But that's part of the journey.
Well, what were some of the challenges in the early days that you can tell us about?
Believing the real estate agent when he said we'd have no problems obtaining a water license. Because they're not handing out any more water licenses, and buying water licenses from existing water license holders are farmers are pretty attached to their water licenses, even if they're not using them anymore. So that was the main one. That was the main thing. just not doing due diligence, sort of having starry eyes about the other infrastructure on the property, because we bought the property primarily for me to start a vegetable growing business, because I'm a horticulturist by training. And there was lots of, the ad said nothing about the two poly houses and the additional shedding that was on that was useful for what we wanted to do. So we just didn't have water. So we ended up sinking a bore and getting a water license for the bore that way. So
you mentioned the move was about vegetables originally. Tell us about your farming practices and what's at the core of it to produce quality vegetables.
Okay, so there's probably a few things. One, I mean, the way we raise the way we grow anything, whether it be plant or animal, is as much in tandem with nature as we possibly can. We certainly don't use pesticides. We haven't done. I mean, the property was a horse hobby farm for the 15 years before we bought it, and they hadn't used herbicides on it. And when we turned up, the neighbours, apparently there was a book being run in the valley about how long we'd last, because we were clearing the paddocks manually. They were kind of like, just spray it once and be done with it. It's kind of like, well, no, we're pretty clear we're not going to do that. So, but yeah, there's with our pigs now, there's no tail docking. There's obviously no sow stalls. The animals live their entire lives outdoors with rudimentary shedding, protection from the elements, and it's really enjoyable.
What's life on the farm like for the pigs that you have?
Well, I guess you could say it's everything a pig could want. There's really great food laid on. They've got wonderful wallows, and we do really good mud here, so that goes well for them. We've planted a lot of shelter belts, endemic trees, which they get to lounge under.
Tell us about the decision to start growing pigs.
So when we first arrived, one of the books that was by a guy called Joel Salatin, titled "You Can Farm," and in it he goes through lots of things. But one of the things I remember him saying is that it's far easier to raise and market $50 worth of protein than it is to raise and market $50 worth of vegetables. And that sort of stuck with me a bit, and I went, no, that can't be right. And while it's probably a little easier now, it certainly was kind of difficult at the time. So we decided to look at some form of livestock. We've only got 22 acres here, so anything larger than pigs was not really viable. And we could do it with minimal infrastructure. So everything's portable here. They're contained on double strand electric fence. They're all their feed troughs and water troughs are movable, and transporting them could be done in a cage on a box trailer. So we got two pigs, and I liked them and they liked me, and away we went.
How did you decide on what breed to choose, and what was the decision based on?
The decision, well, we did some research, spoke to some fellow growers, and because we're raising the animals outdoors, well, there's a number of things. There's we were going for a niche, a quality product with a niche market, so a heritage breed with really good muscular fat was one attribute we wanted. Raising commercial or white or pink pigs outdoors is not viable because they get sunburnt. So obviously a dark or black pig, for want of a better term, works much better outdoors. So those were the two main reasons that we chose. Initially, we had Wessex saddlebacks because there's a registered grower down in the not far from here, and then we got given a couple of Berkshires because their owners liked the way we were raising pigs and they wanted to get out of pigs. So that's how we ended up with Berkshires.
What was it like transferring from, you had the background of being a horticulturist, you were growing veggies and you introduced animals to the mix. Was there some challenges dealing with the pigs early on?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Loading pigs. I mean, it's quite. It's funny. It's funny. It's interesting because now I get to see other people who have been in the pig game like us back then for sort of 6 months, and I watch how they handle pigs when we help them with transport and things like that. Yes, there were lots of challenges. Containing pigs, learning how to handle them, and that's why we started very, very small with just 2 pigs. But there are always interesting moments when you're dealing with livestock, particularly when you want them to go one way and they have absolutely no intention of doing that anytime soon. What is it? Never wrestle a pig in the mud, in mud, because after half an hour you realise they're enjoying it.
Well, give us a sense of the average day on the farm for you.
These days, it's primarily there's an on week and an off week, and as in there's a week where I spend a lot of time on the road transporting and distributing our animals because we do that ourselves. But a general farm day will be up at first light and feed myself, and then go out and prepare the feed for the pigs, which is we also give them a large amount of whey each day, which because we recycle or repurpose a lot of pig feed from local businesses. So we get about 15,000 litres of whey every 3 weeks. So that gets fed to them in addition to water. They have a grain ration which we mill here on the farm. It's primarily wheat with a proprietary protein and vitamin additive. And then we also use we rescue soaked barley from the local craft brewer in at Port Macquarie. And there's also a regular quantity of fruit and vegetable from a food processor also in Port Macquarie. And then when someone makes a mistake or there's overproduction at the local cheese factory, we can get vast quantities of pallet containers of cream or feta. So the pigs have a varied diet.
What sort of impact does this varied diet have on the outcome of the meat?
Oh, we like to think it goes a long way to how our animals taste and what they produce. It's the variety, like us. Hopefully, they're happy with it. I mean, I must admit, I haven't. I'm not that interested in doing an A/B testing, like running a litter of pigs on one particular diet through to market and running another litter of pigs on without whey. I mean, the thing we've found with whey is that initially one of the problems we had was a very high fat content. We'll be getting fat scores of regularly in excess of 25 mil, which for the general public is not really desirable. There are some chefs that are quite quite like that sort of fat content. But we've realised that with the whey, it reduces their grain intake without affecting their ability to gain weight. So it minimises. It's brought our fat scores down to reliably they're around 15 mil now.
What surprised you about pig farming?
I'm surprised at the how intelligent the animals are, and how they really do. Certainly the sows, because you have different personalities, and that's really that's something that I find quite interesting. Aside from the general growing and raising of the pigs, and that also makes it a bit hard because you tend to get attached to the sows. You're feeding an animal for every day for 4 or 5 years. You get up close and personal. So,
tell us about when you first started selling your product. How did the process of selling your pork begin?
We've always been committed to direct marketing, to connect direct with our customers. So we were at farmers markets locally here on the Mid-North Coast and in Sydney, a weekly market in Sydney. And we did a range of, we did fresh veg, we had a range of preserves from our vegetables and eggs, pasture-raised eggs, and we added the pork to the mix, and it went from there.
Where does your pork end up these days?
Our pork is in Sydney and Newcastle, Hunter Valley, and here on the Mid-North Coast, either directly through online sales or through a couple of providors in Sydney and Newcastle, and also direct to some chefs here on the Mid-North Coast.
What's some of the chefs and restaurants that have been champions of your product?
Here on the Mid-North Coast, there's 2444 and Drury Lane Eatery, and also Richie and Carla at the Hilltop Store, Muse in the Hunter Valley and Yellow Billy, and then Danielle at Fred's in Paddington. She's been a big champion.
Have you had a chance to eat your pork in restaurants, and how does it make you feel?
Yes, we have. It's a really good feeling, and more so not so much eating our pork in the restaurants, but seeing other people eat our pork in the restaurants is what's most pleasing and gratifying. Just the reaction that they have to see people enjoying eating something that you've produced is always heartening.
Who's the cook in your house? Is pork on the menu quite a bit at home?
Yes, pork is on the menu, and my wife Therese is the cook in the house. Most definitely.
What's the signature dish of the house when it comes to pork?
The signature dish of the house when it comes to pork, certainly in winter, is a beautiful piece of neck poached in milk with some lemon and sage. That's a favourite here, particularly if we can get some local buffalo milk.
You made a tree change. What is it that's so special about being on the farm for you?
What's so special about being on the farm? Being able to, in many ways, being able to partner nature, being a partner with nature in what you do, and like rising with the sun or before the sun, not necessarily attached to an alarm, and because Mother Nature's the silent partner with a controlling interest in our business, and every now and then she whips your butt and lets you know that she's still there. But yeah, it's I just love waking up. We've got a really great outlook where the house is positioned. Every day's a great day here.
How has pig farming changed your life?
Well, farming has changed my life in the realization of the whole realization about food and how it's grown and how it's marketed, and you really do come to realize that you are what you eat. When before we moved here, I mean, we believed we ate well. We shopped at Colesworth and did the usual things. But once you start, what happened to us? I think I saw a documentary called "The World According to Monsanto," and kind of like, that makes you sit up and listen, and then you go and watch Food Inc., and then you read a book by Michael Pollan called "The Omnivore's Dilemma," and you just keep it sort of you get to the stage where you either you keep digging and find out more and more and more, or you just walk away and you don't want to look. But it's really opened our eyes to how important the connection with what you eat has on your health and the health and the health of society and the health of environment. And thankfully, more and more people are realizing this. For too long, we've believed in trusting the so-called authorities.
That connection that you fostered with the land and with growing pigs. Tell us about the land and the importance of the environment, and particularly the soil.
Well, everything comes from the soil. You can't raise good plants or good animals on bad soil. So we need to care for the soil. We exist because of the top 6 inches of the layer of the earth and the fact that it rains. And culturally, generally we don't. So once again, with regenerative agriculture becoming more and more prevalent, people are becoming aware of that it's necessary to protect and rejuvenate our soil. And it's where there's a connection between the health of everyone's gut and gut flora linked to the soil that you eat, how it's grown. There's so much we're still to discover about that connection.
Tell us about what you've done to the soil where you are to make it work and create these amazing vegetables and pigs.
We rotate the pigs through the fields so that they're not on any one area of the farm for too long. We plant cover crops following the pigs so that they feed the soil and the organisms in the soil and provide cover over the soil. We spray around biodynamic preparations 4 times a year. What else do we do? Well, we make compost. We make lots of compost, and plant following the lunar cycle, because we believe that has an impact on the quality of the plants.
All of these things that you're doing to help the soil and working with Mother Nature as best you can, why is what you do in that way so important? Because
we believe that it makes our food taste better and have a higher nutrient density. And that, I mean, I get that's the short answer, and that's why we do it. We believe, the flavour of It's like wine. You should be able to taste the mid north coast or even our valley in what we produce. That's one of the reasons why it tastes the way it does. And obviously the love that we pour into doing what we do.
Tell us about small producers like you. You mentioned nutrient-rich, nutrient-dense produce. How is that different to large-scale farming these days? And what sort of contribution is smaller producers like you making?
I guess nutrient density it's an attribute that is more prevalent with small producers. We don't. I guess the best way to describe it is with the pigs. We process the pigs when they're at a particular weight. We're not hard and fast that we've got to get the pigs to a particular weight in a certain number of days. So we're not. If it takes an extra 2 or 3 weeks for a pig to get to 75 kilos, then that's what it is. We're not precious about that. So I mean, of course, it costs us more money in feed and time, but that's how it is. We're more interested in the quality of the product than the cost of than only being interested in the cost to get the product to market.
You've won accolades for the quality of the pork that you produce. So what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of our consistency. That's I mean, obviously the initial award or two was really, really great, but to be able to do that over 6 years is very, very pleasing. And to be recognised within the industry by our peers, it's good. I mean, the best thing is having our we do an event here on the farm called Meals in the Fields, and it's pleasing to have 80 people sitting at a long table in your front paddock, sitting down to a 4-course meal with produce grown from your farm, along with those of other small producers on the mid north coast.
You had Chef Richie Dolan cook for one of those. What did he dish up, and what was it like?
It was beautiful. There would have been there would have been a duck entree because we Burrawong Guyane just up in the next valley from us, and they're good friends of ours. So we used some Burrawong duck. He did 3 weaner pigs on a open fire, and so there was suckling pig with fire roasted pumpkin, and then Carla did a beautiful dessert. It was a very special event. We're looking forward to doing that again at Easter. We've been with the drought and COVID. Obviously, we've been a bit constrained of late the last few years, but we're looking forward to doing that again. And it's a big undertaking. It's like holding a wedding.
You've made an incredible tree change to produce some of Australia's best pork. But what is it that you love about what you do?
Connecting with our community, connecting with we've got customers that we've been feeding for 8 to 10 years now, and just that's very, very pleasing and gratifying. And being part of this industry is it's really, really rewarding. The ability to it is quite noble to grow food for your community. I love it.
What's next for Near River Produce?
What's next? Basically, I mean, what's the most immediate thing is to get back to supplying our restaurants and chefs that as they reopen, and may that continue to happen. And then from there, look, there'll be some growth, but we're pretty happy with where we are and how things are going.
Well, Andrew, there's a lot of chefs and consumers very happy with where you are and what you're doing as well. We've loved having you on the Crackling today to hear just a part of your story. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Huck, and thanks so much for the opportunity.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.